All right. Hello. Thank you for joining this session titled Excel Mastery, Effective Data Visualization and Trend Analysis for Database Renewals Assessment. I am Amy Castillo, Director of Access and Discovery at the University of Texas at Arlington Libraries. Today's agenda will include an overview of the advantages of using Excel to create a data viz dashboard, although there are some other data visualization tools available on the market. I will then also provide a step-by-step demo of setting up a dashboard in a live Excel environment. I will conclude with a few use cases that have helped my library make use of the dashboard for trend analysis and renewals assessment of our databases collection and plans to use it going forward. Okay, so why Excel and not a dedicated data viz tool? The reason why I've chosen Excel is that it's relatively easy to set up and maintain over time. It does not require specialized knowledge or programming skills. Typically, Excel is available in work environments without an additional cost. Data visualization tools like Tableau and Power BI may need to have licenses purchased to use the full suite. And while Excel does have its limitations, it can serve as a way to bridge the gap of knowledge and build confidence with data viz tools as you kind of grow in your skills or provide the seed data that will be used when you take that step to use those kinds of other kinds of tools. Firstly, if you have a chance, please view the NASIG Autumn 2024 recording of Connect 4, Visualize Your Data Annual Database Renewals in Excel, which I presented with my colleague Tracy Holman. This covers creating a formatted table, pivot tables, pivot charts, and a slicer, and I've linked to the slides and handout from that session. Today's presentation, however, expands further by creating multiple slicers, pivot tables, and pivot charts in Excel for a broader look into relevant data for database renewals and assessment. On the screen is an example of the basic dashboard I presented within the NASIG 2024 autumn session, which has 4 charts and 1 slicer. This version on slide 6 is a preview of the expanded version that I intend to share in this session. The dashboard now includes 7 charts and 5 slicers, allowing for additional analysis into fund sources, open access usage, and subject area coverage. The great thing about creating a dashboard in Excel is that there is lots of flexibility. Your library may have very similar or different needs for data to dive into. My hope is that this session helps you dream up of some possibilities to apply in your context. To follow along, please download the practice data. If you are an attendee for the NASIG 2025 annual conference, the slides and practice data will be available in SCED as an attachment within the session details. For the master data table, I have included the following data elements that will be used in this demo. The elements from A to G were used in the prior session. However, this last portion of H through P are columns that have been included for the expanded data elements added for this session. This is an example of the spreadsheet with the column headers included. So you can see on row 1, A through P have these column headers that I showed in the prior slide. Some tips before jumping into the live demo portion. When starting your own dashboard from scratch, it will help to have your spreadsheet set up to add your data into. When I created mine, I set up the template and then started plugging in the cost, usage, and fund source data from various sources. Creating a formatted table will make inserting data much easier as well. And this might be well known, but just in case, to quickly select or copy several columns and rows, you can use the following keyboard shortcuts. Control plus Shift plus right arrow will highlight columns with text to the right of the selected cell, and then the Control plus Shift plus down arrow will highlight rows with text below the selected cell. Those that are Mac users will use the Command key instead of Control. Okay. regarding the data for the master data table, this part takes time and can include as little or as much information as you want. The sample data provided includes data from our databases for fiscal year 2022 through 25 to help show trends over time. The sample data is also altered to mask the resource names and reduced compared to our real one to make this not super overwhelming. The resource name is repeated for each fiscal year row. For the purposes of total usage, I have combined controlled downloads with searches to cover usage, for indexes. The cost per use column is a formula of cost divided by total usage, since I only want to use controlled usage in that assessment. And lastly, this master table is set up similarly to counter usage data standard reports, where the resource name repeats multiple times for each data type. Blank cells in the sample data just mean that the data is not yet entered, but we have the space for it when it's ready to be included. Okay. So from this point forward in the recording, I'm going to move over to the demo spreadsheet to walk through the steps. Slides 12 through 37 and the PowerPoint are for reference. If you prefer something tangible to work through, I will come back to the slides for the last portion. So I'm going to move over to the Excel sheet. Okay, so if you haven't yet and you want to follow along, please open the practice data that I provided earlier in the slides. You'll open that up, and I have two slides of, two headings, or tabs here, down here at the bottom. I don't know if you can see where my cursor is. One is called headings, the other one is called data. Starting with the headings tab, we're going to go ahead and create a formatted table. So I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. I'm going to select the first row with the headers and just some empty rows below it. And then I'm going to select Format as Table under the Styles section at the Home ribbon. And then you can pick whatever your preferred style is. I'm going to pick this one. When this box comes up that says Create Table, make sure that the button next to My Table has headers is selected, and then click OK. And then now you have a formatted table that has filtering buttons for the columns. And honestly, I prefer just a slightly different color scheme or theme. So I'm just going to change it to to a different one right there. Okay, so if you haven't already saved your spreadsheet, please go ahead and do that. Next, you'll pull in the data from the Data tab. So I'm going to go over there, and I'll make this a little bit bigger as well. Okay. So I'm going to highlight the cells in this first row, just kind of drag over my cursor, A through P, and then I'm going to do Control Shift down, and then that grabs, highlights all the data rows that have data in it. So I'm going to hit Control Copy to copy that, and then I'm going back to the headings tab, and then I'm going to put my cursor into A2, and then Control V to paste in the data from that other tab. Okay, so I'm going to just make this a little bit bigger. Okay, and then I'm going to rename this headings tab to master table, since this is now going to be that from here on out in the demo. Again, kind of just as a note, each resource name has multiple lines for it per fiscal year. So for example, if your resource has had 3 renewal cycles, you would have 3 lines, one for each cycle. Your master data table can start with whatever number of cycles you desire, but I do recommend including at least 2 to 3 historical fiscal years to use to illustrate your trends. And then also make sure that your resource name is normalized for consistency as you enter it throughout the years. This column will be used as a filtering point for one of the slicers later on. Okay, so going on to creating pivot tables for each of the criteria that we're going to be using, I'll be focusing on creating new tabs for each of those pivot tables. So clicking somewhere in your master table, you'll just make sure something's highlighted and then click on Table Design tab. And then over here in the Tools section, you'll select Summarize with Pivot Table. A pop-up window will come up. The table range will say Table 1, which is the one that's highlighted, and then you just want to make sure that your radio button on New Worksheet stays there. You will click OK, and then now we have a new worksheet with the pivot table fields to be selected. So this first pivot table will focus on the cost year to year. In this right-hand side where it says pivot table fields, I'm going to select resource name, fiscal year, and cost here. And then I'm going to move resource name down here in the areas to the filter area. So resource name will now be in the filters area. Fiscal year will stay in rows, and then cost is automatically put into the value section, and sum of cost is what we're looking for. I'm going to go over to the table and select the values under sum of cost. And then I'm going to the Home tab up here in the ribbon to select the $ accounting number format. So I have the dollar figures to associate with them. And then I'm going to rename this tab Pivot Cost so I can easily refer to it later. Okay, so going back to the master table, we'll be creating these same pivot tables for each of the other criteria. So the next one is going to be on controlled downloads and searches from the total usage column. Just make this a little bit bigger so we can see the numbers. Okay, so I'm selected in the master table, table design, summarize with pivot, click OK, and then just going to make this a little bit bigger. I'm going to select resource name, fiscal year, and total usage. Resource name gets dragged up to the filters area, fiscal year stays in rows, and then sum of total usage stays in the values section. In this case, I want to change these values to kind of a number, or excuse me, a comma style to make it easier to read. I'm going to select the values, click on home, click on comma style, and then I'm going to reduce the decimal points by 2 since I don't need those in this context. Okay, so that is, oh, and then I need to change the name of the tab to Pivot Controlled Usage. Okay, so that one is done. And I apologize because this will seem a little bit monotonous as I get through the rest of these, but I just want to show you this in real time. So going back to the master table, we'll do cost per use next. So table design, summarize with pivot, click OK for new worksheet. I'm going to make this bigger, select resource name, fiscal year, and then cost per use, move resource name up to filters. And then instead of sum of cost per use, I need to change this value to average. So you'll click the down arrow and then click on value field settings and change sum to average. Click OK, and that automatically changes that. And then I want this to be a $ format as well. So I'm going to select the values, click on home, click on the $. Okay, and then this chart or this table is going to be named pivot cost per use. And you can call these tabs whatever you like. I just liked having the pivot worksheets distinguished a little bit. Okay, next one is going to be the percent change master table. I'm going back to table design, summarize the pivot table, click OK for new worksheet. I'll make this a little bit bigger. Okay, I'm going to select resource name, fiscal year, percent change from prior year. I'll move resource name up, and then same as the prior one, I want to change, I want an average, so instead of sum, I'm going to select value field settings, click on that, and then select average, click OK, and then that changes the overall kind of change, percent changes from a sum to an average. And then I want to click on the values, click on home, and then I want percentages for this format. And I'd like to have additional, just more granularity, so I'm going to include a couple of decimal points here. Okay, and then I'll rename this one pivot percent change. Okay, That one is done. Next one is fund source, going back to the master table, table design, summarize with pivot table, click OK, make this bigger. This one I'm going to select resource name, fiscal year, cost, and fund source. So I will move resource name up to filters, and then I want to move the fund source from rows over to columns so I can see it across this way. And then on the table itself, I want to see this in the dollar format, go back to home, and then accounting style here. And then in this case, I'd prefer to not see the grand totals on the rows or columns. So I'm going to move over to the Design tab here. And then under the Layout section of the ribbon, I'm going to click on the down arrow for grand totals and off for columns and rows. And then that just leaves me with just the information for without grand totals included. And I'm going to name this sheet Pivot Fund Source. Okay, the next one to make, I'm going back to the master table, click on table design and summarize with pivot table, click OK. This one is going to be on open access usage. I'll make this a little bit bigger. Going to select resource name, fiscal year, and OA usage, which is further down on the list. Resource name gets pulled to filters, fiscal year stays in rows, and then the OA full text stays in values as a sum. Okay, over back on the table for this, I'm going to select the comma format, go back to home, comma, and then take off the 2 decimal points. And I'll rename this sheet Pivot OA usage. And then moving on to the last table to create, go back to master table, table design, summarize with pivot table, click OK. I'll make this a little bit larger. This last one is going to be on controlled usage versus OA usage, and it's going to be using some of the similar steps from before. So I'll be clicking on actually fiscal year, controlled full text, and OA full text. Okay, so in this instance, some of controlled full text and some of OA full text are in the values, but then there's another one that automatically created up here in columns that are the values, and that's fine. We want it to stay that way. So I'm going to go back to the table, select the values, and then I'll change this also to a comma style with no decimal points. And this one's going to be called controlled VSOA. Okay, so that's all of the pivot tables completed. So next we're going to actually create the dashboard. I'm going to add a new sheet. I'm going to actually click back here on pivot cost and I'll do a new sheet here, and I'm just going to move this up to the front. I'm going to name this new sheet charts. You can call it whatever you'd like. I just tend to, since all of this is going to be just charts, that's kind of my preferred term, but again, this is super flexible. I'm going to go ahead and apply a background color just so as I add in charts in the slicers, everything can pop up a bit easier and I don't have to see the grid lines. So using this button at the very top between A and one column, select all the fields. I'm going to find a background color that I like. I'm going to do this darker blue here. And then, so that's my home base for all the charts. So starting with the pivot cost tab, I'm going to make sure that I'm selected somewhere in the table. And then at the top of the ribbon, there's a button or a tab called Pivot Table Analyze. I'll click on that. and then I'm going to select Pivot Chart within the Tools section. Okay, so this window comes up and it gives suggestions on what kind of chart to use. I'm going to just keep a clustered chart, but you're welcome, of course, to look at the other options. I'm going to click OK, and then a chart is created. However, I want it to be on the Charts tab, so I'm going to right-click and then move Chart. And then on this window, it'll have object in highlighted. Right now it says pivot cost because that's where I am, but I want to change it to charts. And then I'll click OK. And now my newly created chart is on the Charts tab. I'm going to do a few modifications. I'm going to change this name from instead of total to year cost. And then I'll just move this a little bit. And then I'm going to go up to this plus sign for chart elements, and I'll make a few selections here. I want to remove the axis. I want to keep the chart title. I want to add data labels in the data table, and then I want to remove the grid lines and legend. And this is all customizable. You can select whichever ones you like to use. These are just the ones that I typically use. And then there is the option to do different styles. There's multiple versions here, and then different colors based on your theme. So you have those options as well. Okay, so that is the first chart done. Okay, so the next one is going to be on controlled usage. I'm going over to the Pivot Controlled Usage tab, and I just need to make sure I'm clicked into the table somewhere. I'll click back on Pivot Table Analyze, going back to Pivot Chart. I'm just going to maintain staying with clustered column, click OK, and then I'll be doing these same steps. So again, it seems a little redundant. This goes pretty fast. Really, the longest thing that takes time is gathering the data. So I'll right click on the chart, click on Move Chart, and then Object In is going to be changed to Charts. Click OK. And then now my controlled usage chart is over here with the cost chart. So I'm going to rename this to Total Controlled Usage, Searches, Less Downloads, just in case I'm sharing this with others and they just need some clarity on what this means. And then I'm going to make the same kind of chart element modifications. I just want these 3 selected title chart, data labels, and data tables selected for my chart, but again, pick your preference. Okay, so the next chart I'm going to make is the cost per use. And again, just click in the table somewhere, Pivot Table Analyze, Pivot Chart, click OK for your chart preference. I'll right click and then move chart, and then click on Charts for the object in, click OK. And then I'm going to move this chart just up in this area, and this is all flexible. You can move your charts wherever you'd like. This is going to be called cost per use controlled. And then I'm going to make the same chart modifications as before. Okay. Next up is the percent change table. Okay, so I'm clicked into the percent change tab, the table, Pivot Table Analyze, Pivot Chart, click OK for your selected chart, and then right click on the chart, click on Move Chart, change object in to Charts, click OK, and then move your created chart to your preferred location. This is going to be renamed to percent change of costs year to year. Okay, and then I'm going to update these chart elements here. Okay, so that one is completed. Next up is the fund source chart. I'll click into the Pivot Fund Source tab, into the table, Pivot Table Analyze, Pivot Chart. I'm going to just take the cluster chart option here as well. Click OK. Right click on the chart, move chart. Object in needs to be changed to charts. Click OK. I'm going to move this down to this section. And I want this to be a little bit wider. And then I'm going to just make a few changes here. Going to click on chart title since that doesn't have that here yet. Data labels, table, take out the grid lines. Okay, and then this needs to be renamed fund sources. Okay. All right, next up is the OA usage table. So Pivot OA usage tab, click in the table, Pivot Table Analyze, click on Pivot Chart. I'll take the cluster chart, right click on the chart, move chart, select charts from the dropdown and object in, click OK. And I apologize, I realize I'm saying charts quite often. I'm going to move this one over to the side here. This will say OA usage. And then I'll change the chart elements to my preferred 3. Okay, and then going to my last chart for the controlled versus OA downloads, going over to the table, click on Pivot Table Analyze, click on Pivot Chart. I'll go with, actually in this case, I want a line chart. So I'm going to select line. I'll go with this first option. I'll click OK, and then I'm going to right click on the chart, move chart, and then object in moves to charts. Click OK. Okay, and then I'm going to, I'll put this over here. Okay, so in this particular instance, I want to keep the access. I do want to add a chart title though. And the labels, I'll keep the grid lines and the legend. So this is going to say controlled downloads versus OA downloads. Did I spell that right? Okay, all good. Okay, so that is all of the charts done for this charts dashboard. Again, you can range all of these to your liking, however you wish, or just resize all that good stuff. Okay, so the next step will be to create slicers so that we can drill into various filters. So creating the slicers helps unify the charts together and provides an easy way to dynamically adjust the chart visuals to view trends over time based on selections made. To create several slicers at once, select one of the charts, which at this point I've selected year-to-year cost, and then from the Pivot Chart Analyze tab, you'll select the Insert Slicer button from the Filter section. When this window comes up, I'm going to select 5 different slicers. So I'm going to select this resource name, fiscal year, primary subject area, LC class, and fund source. I'm going to click OK. I just want to make sure I have 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Click OK. And then all 5 of my selected slicers have been created. So at this point, I'm going to move the slicers to my preferred area on the charts dashboard. So I'm going to move fund source down here. LC class will go in this general area. Primary subject area here. I'll go ahead and get resource name. And then actually I want to have fiscal year next to the resource name. So I'll move these a little bit. Just make some space. Okay. All right. So now that everything's been moved to my preferred location, I'm going to select one of the slicers. I'll start with resource name, and then I need to connect these slicers to the charts. Right now, it's going to be focused on just the one chart that I selected when I created the slicer. I want them to be connected to all of the charts. So I'm going to click on Report Connections, and then I'll make this a bit bigger. Right now, again, this is only selected to the cost table, but I want it to be assigned to all of the tables on this dashboard. So you'll select all of them and click OK. And then now this slicer is associated with all of the charts. And I'll do the same for each slicer. So I'll click on fiscal year, report connections, just make sure everything's selected. Click OK. And again, just another like monotonous things. Once you kind of do it once, you see like it's just pretty easy. It's a lot of clicking boxes, moving things around. Okay, LC class. And then select all the options for this one. And then lastly, the fund source slicer, report connections, and then select all the tables on this list. Click OK. Okay, so that's essentially the dashboard done. If you want to make multiple selections, just make sure when you're selecting, let's say I want to look at multiple subjects at the same time. I want to look at anthropology and art and chemistry. What I'm doing is I'm clicking on the first one, and then I'm holding the control button down and then selecting multiple. So if I want to deselect something, I'll hold that control button and then click on the button again, and then it's deselected. So it's really using that control button to make multiple selections here. And then all of the charts change based on the selections that I've included. And then something else that occurs is that the items within that subject area, for example, move up to the top of the list here to kind of show that these are highlighted because they're associated with these two subject areas. These LC classes move up because, again, those are associated with the subject areas selected. And then all of the charts show the data that's relevant to the selections. Okay, and then to deselect selections, you'll just click on the clear filter button. So I just want to do that. And then you can do multiple selections. So let's say I want to do the communication subject area, but I only want to see FY23 and 24. I can control and then click on 2 and 5. And then that leaves me with just 2 fiscal years to look at. So again, it works the opposite way too. You can have multiple filters running at the same time. And then again, you can deselect and it'll go back to your original dashboard version. Okay, so again, this is done. This dashboard can be modified for aesthetics, color, preferences, theme, design, all of that. I'm going to go back to the slides so that we can pick up from the rest of this session here. Okay, so and I'm gonna scroll through the next few slides really quickly. These are, again, just screenshots of what I just did in the Excel version. So I'm going to, okay. So again, you can customize your dashboard. Having that background color helps just hide the Excel grid behind the charts and slicer, just to make it a little bit more easy on the eyes. In terms of ongoing maintenance, as data is included into the master table, make sure to click on the Refresh All button under the Data Formatting tab. When a new fiscal year starts, add new rows for each resource with the fiscal year name to prepare for the incoming data for that year. And if you add more charts to the dashboard, make sure you go back to Report Connections for each slicer and check the box to include the new chart/table so it is linked with all the others. And then again, just a second reminder about where to find the Refresh All button. It's on the Data tab ribbon within the Queries and Connections section. I click on this anytime I add in new information to make sure it's applied to all the tables and charts. Okay, so now getting into the use cases for why and how we're using these new data elements at the UTA libraries. This slide shows a screenshot of our current dashboard. It has been a major win for our acquisitions team. I oversee our collections budget and finally feel that there's just a lot better clarity on what the trends are overall. And our assistant director of acquisitions can also use this data as she works on accessibility reviews and justifications. We have also started talking more about the gaps we see right off the bat, lower used materials that could use some marketing assistance or outreach, as well as having conversations with liaison librarians to gather feedback on um, lower performing resources or needs, gaps, things that we're seeing from this visualization. Again, this updated version from the one I shared in the NASIG 2024 autumn session came about to answer specific needs that I have at my current library. I had created the previous version for my prior library and needed to have the same kind of information for our collection assessment needs at UTA. Adding in 3 more tables and charts has helped answer questions from my AUL and the executive leadership team on how open access usage is doing, as well as fund sources for our databases collection. It has been very interesting to see the trend of open access usage increasing while the controlled full text downloads are decreasing. I can only make assumptions on why that is at this point, but having this data available visually spanning several years provides a quick way to consider research opportunities to dive into the why. The additional slicers and having the ability to make multiple selections has been a game changer. I love that I can do like a simple control plus click to make several selections to get more insight. This has helped respond to inquiries from our liaison librarians regarding database subscriptions within their subject area. I have also been interested in seeing the scale of resources by subject area and LC class as they relate to expenditures, usage, and cost per use. We do use Choreo Insights as another collection assessment tool, but its strength is more on individual items marked in our holdings within WorldCat. This dashboard focuses almost exclusively on database packages, and it has helped us see what the strengths and potential opportunities are for expansion. And then we can also use the dashboard to monitor struggling resources to target for marketing and outreach or seek alternatives that better address the campus community's priorities. Okay, wrapping up, I do hope this session is helpful. Again, I've linked to the practice data as well as a step-by-step handout document as another way to follow along. I thank you for your time and please reach out if you have any questions. Take care and enjoy the NASIG 2025 conference.